It all began to unravel on a calm Saturday morning. I had just finished brewing a fresh pot of coffee, the rich aroma wafting through the house as sunlight streamed through the kitchen window. Jolene entered the room, her hair still tousled from sleep, wearing that oversized college sweatshirt she was so fond of. She offered a smile, but there was something subtly wrong with it. Not something easily noticeable unless you were really paying attention. But I caught it. After being married for 7 years, you start to recognize even the smallest fractures in someone's demeanor. "Conrad, what's your take on couples spending some time apart every now and then?" she asked casually, like she was suggesting a new dish to try or moving some furniture around. Her tone was light, but the question struck a strange chord. I raised my eyebrow. "What do you mean? Like heading out for a weekend with your girlfriends or something?" I tried to keep my voice neutral. She let out a gentle laugh, but even that felt like it had been rehearsed in advance. "No, I mean more like having separate adventures. Just simple, harmless fun. Something to add a little spark." A strange tightness formed in my chest. Jolene had always been spontaneous, but this suggestion felt unlike her. I shrugged off the discomfort and took a sip from my coffee, trying not to overreact. "I suppose it depends on what kind of adventures you're talking about," I replied cautiously. She waved her hand as if to downplay it all, her wedding ring catching a glint of light. "Nothing serious. Maybe dinner with a coworker or hanging out with an old friend. Just a way to keep things from getting dull." Her words lingered in the air longer than they should have. I nodded and forced a smile, but deep inside, a quiet voice started to whisper, this wasn't just about keeping things interesting. The following week passed like a slow walk through thick fog. Jolene seemed distracted in ways she never had before. She checked her phone constantly, slipped into other rooms to take calls in private, and began coming home later than usual. I tried to convince myself I was reading too much into it. She had never given me a reason not to trust her. Then came the night she said she was going out to dinner with someone from work named Neil. I didn't recognize the name. When I asked who he was, she brushed it off, saying, "Just some guy from marketing, not even that interesting." She chuckled, kissed me on the cheek, and promised she'd be back by 9. I wanted to believe her. I really did. I needed to. But the uneasy knot in my stomach tightened the moment the door closed behind her. 9 o'clock came and went. No sign of her. I called. No answer. Sent a message. Nothing. At 10:30, she finally walked in. Her cheeks were flushed, and her smile seemed a bit too bright. "Sorry, Neil just kept talking and talking," she explained, kicking off her shoes. There was something in the way she said his name that chilled me to the bone. I didn't confront her. I didn't want to seem insecure or paranoid. But every instinct in me was screaming that something was off. As soon as she turned her back, I made a quiet promise to myself. I wasn't going to ignore the signs anymore. If she believed I wasn't paying attention, she was mistaken. What she didn't realize was that I had started to watch, and I wasn't going to let this slide. The next morning, Jolene was back to her usual self, smiling and chatting about weekend plans. She even offered to pick up some steaks for the grill. But no matter how normal she acted, I couldn't shake the feeling from the night before. Everything she said felt like it was masking something darker. I kept my doubts hidden, playing along, even complimenting her new haircut from earlier in the week. I needed her to think I was none the wiser. It was all part of my plan. For now, the goal was to lower her guard. Step 1? Checking her phone. I know how it sounds. I never imagined myself as someone who would invade their partner's privacy. But the way she had been glued to that device lately made my nerves itch. So when she went out that afternoon to run some errands, I saw my chance. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter, charging. Locked. But here's the thing. After 7 years of being married, you learn a few things. Like her passcode. It was the day we got married, March 14th. My fingers trembled as I typed it in, half expecting the screen to reject me. But it didn't. Her messages were too perfect. Clean. Almost sterile. Her conversations with Neil came off as strictly professional. Still, there was something wrong in the tone. Like in one of the texts, just the usual. Nothing exciting here. Another one read, "Haha. No, he doesn't notice anything. He's pretty laid back." Reading that felt like a blow straight to the chest. Was she talking about me? What exactly wasn't I noticing? I kept scrolling, eyes darting over every word, trying to put the pieces together. And then I found it. A message from Neil, nestled deeper in the chat, surrounded by other texts. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." My vision started to blur. Amazing? Last night? I slammed her phone onto the table and drew in a shaky breath. my chest rising and falling rapidly as I tried to comprehend what I had just uncovered. She had looked me in the eye and lied. There had been no dinner with colleagues. It had been just her and Neil. And whatever they were doing together, it was clearly something she couldn't bring herself to tell me about. Later that afternoon, when Jolene came back home, I acted like everything was perfectly normal. I smiled warmly, placed a kiss on her forehead, and even lent a hand as she unpacked the groceries. But inside, my thoughts were in turmoil. Every time she laughed, every glance she gave me, every word she spoke felt like a blade slicing deeper. She was oblivious to the fact that I had uncovered the truth, and that ignorance was the only advantage I had, my secret weapon as I quietly started laying the groundwork for what came next. That night, sleep eluded me. I stared blankly at the ceiling, my mind running a reel of our conversations from the past several weeks. Things I had brushed off now seemed glaringly obvious. Her renewed focus on me time, the messages that pinged in the middle of the night, the unfamiliar scent of cologne on her coat. None of it had made sense before, but now it all fit together like puzzle pieces. I wanted to demand answers immediately, but I knew I needed undeniable evidence first. Real, solid proof. So I took a step I never imagined I would. I reached out to a private investigator. His name was Dale, a weathered man in his early 50s, with a face that looked like it had been through every kind of story imaginable. I shared my concerns with him over the phone, keeping out the deeply personal aspects. He didn't ask many follow-ups, just stated his fee and gave me his word that he'd handle everything discreetly. The next 7 days felt like a never-ending fog of anxiety and anticipation. Jolene didn't change her behavior much, but now I saw everything with new eyes. The way she took longer to get ready in the mornings, the way she smiled more at her phone, and the lightness in her demeanor, as though a heavy burden had been lifted. And that burden was me. It was on a Thursday afternoon that Dale finally called. His voice was low and serious. "We need to meet," he said. "I found something you'll want to see." That same evening, we met at a small diner on the edge of town, one of those quiet places where people didn't pry. Dale was already waiting in a corner booth when I arrived. In front of him lay a manila envelope. His face was unreadable, but the look in his eyes said everything. This wouldn't be easy. "Conrad," he said, motioning for me to sit. "Before we get into it, I want you to be ready. What I have here, it's not good." My pulse was pounding so hard it nearly drowned out his words. "Go ahead," I said, trying to steady my voice, even though inside I felt unmoored. He pushed the envelope toward me. I hesitated before opening it, my hands unsteady as I pulled out the stack of photographs. The first image struck me like a thunderclap. There was Jolene, seated in a dimly lit bar, her hand resting intimately on Neil's thigh. Her face glowed with a joy I hadn't seen in months. The next photo was even more damning. They were outside in a parking lot, leaning against his car. His hands circled her waist, drawing her in as they kissed, deeply, passionately. It wasn't the kind of kiss you shared if you were afraid of being seen. I leafed through the rest of the photos in stunned silence. There was no way to spin what I was seeing. She hadn't just gone out with a colleague, she had crossed every line that mattered. "She's been seeing him for about 3 weeks, Dale said, cutting through the silence with his gravelly voice. "Dinners, late-night meetups, even a few extended lunch breaks. It's all documented." I stared blankly at the evidence, my chest tightening with every second. I tried to ask the question that haunted me, but couldn't finish it. Dale answered anyway. "They've been to a hotel. I didn't follow them inside, but I've seen enough over the years to know what that usually means." My body burned with fury. I wanted to shout, to slam the table, to lash out at anything within reach. But instead, I sat there, gripped by a paralyzing mixture of pain and disbelief. The woman I had devoted my life to had thrown it all away for him. "What now?" I managed to ask, barely louder than a whisper. "That depends on you," Dale replied. "But if you want my honest opinion, don't confront her just yet. Not until you know what you want to do next. Right now, you've got the upper hand. Don't give it away." I gave a silent nod, returning the photos to the envelope. I paid Dale, thanked him with a quiet word, and left the diner without another glance back. The weight of what I had seen settled over me like a thick fog as I drove. But somewhere in the heartbreak, a flicker of determination began to burn. Dale was right. I couldn't just react. I had to be deliberate. I needed a plan. When I stepped through the door, Jolene was already lying in bed, her face softly lit by the glow of her phone screen. She glanced up and gave me that same overly sweet smile she'd been using lately. "How was your evening?" she asked, her tone light, as if everything in our world was perfectly intact. "It was fine," I replied, forcing a pleasant smile. just caught up with an old friend. She didn't press for more, and I didn't offer anything else. Rather than confronting her immediately, I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat at the dining table. My fingers clutched the manila envelope tightly. It felt like it weighed a ton. Despite the heaviness it brought, it also sharpened my focus. Jolene had made her decisions, and now it was time for me to make mine. Over the next few days, I began to execute my plan. I contacted a lawyer, laid out my situation, and got started on the divorce paperwork. I didn't utter a single word to Jolene. If she wanted to keep pretending everything was fine, I'd let her. She could keep playing her little game, right up to the moment she realized it was over. By the time the weekend rolled around, everything was in place. I had signed the documents, switched out the locks on our home, and packed her belongings into suitcases by the door. All that remained was to wait for her next romantic escapade. When Saturday evening arrived, Jolene looked radiant as she prepared to go out. She wore a red dress I hadn't seen in what felt like ages, and her hair and makeup were done flawlessly. With a playful smile, she told me not to wait up as she grabbed her purse and stepped out. I waited for the sound of her car pulling out of the driveway before putting everything in motion. The divorce papers were carefully laid out on the dining table, beside the same manila envelope that had changed everything. Her suitcases were positioned neatly by the front entrance, and I left a brief note, just a few words expressing my hope that Neil had been worth it. Then, I sat down in the living room and waited. Jolene didn't return until nearly 1 in the morning. I recognized the familiar hum of her car as she pulled into the driveway. I remained seated in the soft lighting of the living room, the lamp casting a quiet glow on the scene I had arranged. My heart was beating fast, but this time, there was no sorrow, just unwavering determination. As she walked in, I could hear her humming a soft tune, still wrapped in the illusion she'd created with Neil. At first, she didn't see me. The sound of her high heels echoed across the wooden floor as she made her way toward the kitchen, her phone lighting up in her hand. But then, her eyes landed on the suitcases. She stopped in her tracks. "What is all this?" she called out, her voice laced with bewilderment. She turned, scanning the room until her gaze met mine. I was seated on the couch, composed, with the envelope resting on the coffee table. "Welcome home, Jolene," I said evenly. "We need to talk." Her face shifted quickly from confusion to irritation. "Conrad, what's happening here? Why are my things packed?" Leaning forward, I picked up the envelope and extended it toward her. "Because you're not going to be living here anymore." She refused to take it. Instead, she folded her arms and glared. "What are you even talking about?" Without replying immediately, I opened the envelope, pulled out one of the photographs, and laid it gently on the table where she could see it. It showed her and Neil, wrapped in a passionate kiss in a parking lot. Her complexion drained of color. "Would you care to explain this?" My voice stayed calm, yet unmistakably cold. Jolene's mouth moved, but no sound came out at first. "It's not what it looks like," she finally stammered. The sheer absurdity of her response made me chuckle. "Really? So that's not you kissing Neil while I was here, believing in you." Her hands trembled, but she tried to keep her voice steady. "Conrad, please. It happened once. It didn't mean anything. I just—" "Stop," I interrupted, my tone cutting. "Don't insult my intelligence. That photo isn't the only thing I have. I know about the dinners, the hotels, everything." Tears began to form in her eyes, but any empathy I might have felt was long gone. She looked again at her luggage, then back at me. "Please, Conrad. We can work through this. I made a terrible mistake, but it doesn't have to be the end." I stood, towering above her. "No, Jolene. You ended our marriage the moment you decided I wasn't enough. I gave you everything for the past 7 years, and you threw it all away for a fleeting thrill." She reached out, but I stepped back. "Conrad, I still love you. I swear. Neil means nothing to me." "Love," I repeated, shaking my head with disbelief. "You don't betray someone you love. You don't lie and sneak behind their back. You made your choice, Jolene. Now you're going to live with it." I handed her the divorce papers. "These are already signed. You just need to add your name. Then you can take your things and leave." Her quiet tears turned into uncontrollable sobbing. "Please don't do this. I'll never speak to Neil again. I'll do anything to fix this." But her pleading fell flat. I had seen the truth, felt the betrayal, and carried the weight of every dishonest word she'd spoken. There was no going back. "You should have thought about that before you decided Neil was worth more than your marriage," I said, my voice firm. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like you to leave. You can stay with Neil, or whoever else is willing to take you in." Jolene collapsed to the floor, her knees hitting the ground as she clutched the divorce papers like they held the weight of a final judgment. I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences, just not under my roof. Without another glance, I climbed the stairs and shut the bedroom door behind me, leaving her to gather the fragments of her unraveling world. For the first time in weeks, I experienced a strange kind of stillness. It wasn't quite joy, but it felt like the first step towards something new, something better. When I woke the next morning, a thick silence wrapped around the house. It was too quiet. I looked at the clock beside the bed, just past 7 in the morning. Normally, Jolene would have been in the kitchen, pretending everything was normal while the smell of freshly brewed coffee drifted through the house. But not today. I threw on a shirt and headed downstairs, a growing tension in my chest. The first thing I noticed was that the divorce papers were still sitting on the dining table, and signed. Resting on top of them was a handwritten note. My pulse quickened as I picked it up and immediately recognized her handwriting. Conrad, I don't even know how to begin. I know I hurt you, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I didn't sign the papers because deep down, I still hope we have a chance to make things right. I'll be staying with a friend for now. Please call me when you're ready to talk. Jolene. I crushed the note in my hand, the phrase "work things out" repeating in my head like a cruel echo. After everything she had put me through, she still believed reconciliation was possible? It was almost comical. Almost. Her bags were gone. So was her car. As I stood alone in the living room, the reality of her absence began to sink in. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? To reclaim my life and be free from the web of deception she had spun? So why did the house feel like it had lost its soul? Max, our adopted dog, padded over quietly, his tail wagging uncertainly, as if he could sense the emotional weight in the room. I knelt beside him, scratching behind his ears, grateful for the quiet loyalty in his eyes. It's just the two of us now, buddy, I whispered. We'll figure this out together. The days that followed were a strange blend of release and rage. Part of me was relieved. The tension that once lingered like smoke had finally cleared. But the silence she left behind was unsettling. I couldn't stop the loop playing in my mind, every moment of betrayal as vivid as the day it happened. I threw myself into work, trying to bury the thoughts under spreadsheets and deadlines. But when night came, everything slowed down. I would sit on the couch, my eyes fixed on the empty space where she used to sit, her laughter still haunting the corners of the room. Max would curl up beside me, his soft breathing the only sound that broke the silence. Her texts came every day, one after another, each message more desperate than the last. Conrad, please talk to me. I'm sorry. Can we meet, even just once, to talk this through? I miss you. I miss us. But I couldn't respond. What would I even say? That I no longer trusted her? That every time I blinked, I saw her in that parking lot with Neil? That I kept replaying their lies, wondering how long it had all been going on? About a week after she left, an unfamiliar number lit up my phone. I almost ignored it, assuming it was spam, but something made me press answer. Hello, I said, guarded. Conrad, it's Neil. My whole body went cold at the sound of his voice. What do you want? I snapped. There was a pause before he finally spoke again. Look, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but this is important. I need to talk to you. I was ready to hang up, but something about his tone stopped me. You've got 2 minutes, I said, voice tight. I didn't know she was married at first, Neil began. She didn't tell me until later. I'm not trying to justify anything. I just thought you should know. I clenched the phone, my knuckles white. And that's supposed to make it better? That you were clueless enough to fall for her lies too. I get it, man. I'm sorry. Really? But there's more to this. Jolene's been telling me things about your marriage, about you. I thought you should hear it. My jaw tensed, heart hammering in my chest. What exactly has she been saying? Another pause. Then Neil's voice softened to a near whisper. She told me you've been ignoring her, that you've been distant and cold. She made it sound like she didn't have a choice. Like she was pushed into looking elsewhere. His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I wanted to yell, to shut him down, to insist he knew nothing about what our life had really been like. But somewhere in the back of my mind, the question took root. Was that really how she saw things? Was that how she made sense of what she'd done? Listen, Neil, I said, my voice low and sharp. Believe whatever story she's spinning for you. But don't ever call this number again. You made your choices, now live with the consequences. I ended the call before he could say a word. My hands trembled as I tossed the phone onto the couch, heart pounding. Neil's voice echoed in my head, filling my thoughts with a chaotic mix of confusion and fury. Still, one truth rang clear through the noise: no matter what Jolene had told him, her betrayal remained. Nothing she said could ever make that right. After that call, my mind wouldn't stop racing. I kept turning over Jolene's lies, the twisted justifications she'd fed Neil. Each one felt like a fresh stab, deepening the wound she had already inflicted. If she could rewrite our entire marriage to excuse her actions, how could I believe a single word from her ever again? The following day, her message came as if nothing had happened. "Can we please talk? I know I hurt you, but we can fix this." I stared at the screen for what seemed like forever. Fix it? She truly believed we could just hit a reset button and carry on? That kind of nerve ignited a fire in me. I was done playing along. For the first time since she had walked out, I texted her back. "We need to talk. Tonight. Come to the house." Her reply was almost immediate. "I'll be there." As the evening approached, I prepared everything. The divorce papers were back on the table, along with printed photos from the private investigator, each one undeniable. This time, there would be no emotional breakdowns, no defenses. I wasn't giving her any more chances. When Jolene arrived, she looked almost relieved, her expression filled with hope. "Conrad, I'm so glad you reached out," she said softly as she stepped inside. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I gestured to the table. "Sit down." Her smile faltered, but she complied. Her gaze landed on the stack of documents and images, and I saw her shoulders tense. "What is all this?" she asked, though her voice already carried the weight of understanding. "This," I replied, sitting opposite her, "is the truth. No more lies. No more justifications. I'm giving you one final chance to be honest. If you lie again, there will be consequences." Her eyes darted between the papers and my face, hesitation written all over her. "Conrad, Start talking," I interrupted firmly. "Why, Neil? How long has this been going on? And what made you think I'd never find out?" She sat stiffly, her hands trembling as she picked up the photographs, flipping through them slowly. With each image, the color drained from her face. By the time she reached the last one, she couldn't bring herself to look at me. "I never thought it would turn into something serious," she whispered, barely audible. "It was just supposed to be something lighthearted." "Lighthearted?" I echoed in disbelief. "You tore apart our marriage for a bit of amusement?" Tears formed in her eyes, but my heart felt stone cold. "It wasn't like that, Conrad. I didn't plan for it to happen. Neil and I just started chatting at work." He listened, and I guess I got drawn in. "Drawn in?" I leaned forward, gripping the table edge. "So I wasn't enough for you anymore? Is that what you're implying?" She shook her head, tears now streaming down her cheeks. "You've always been everything to me. But something changed. You felt distant, like you were slipping away. And Neil made me feel," she started. "Don't." I cut her off, my voice sharp. "Don't you dare try to pin this on me. I gave you my love, my loyalty, my life. And this is how you thank me." Her sobs grew louder, but I stood my ground. "How long?" I demanded. She hesitated, then finally admitted, 2 months. "It started with just dinners, I swear. But then, it became more. It felt like someone had punched me in the gut. For 2 months, she had looked me in the eyes, lied through her teeth, and carried on like nothing was wrong. And for what? A fleeting thrill with some guy at her office?" I rose, pacing back and forth as rage swelled inside me. "You could have said you were unhappy. You could have talked to me, Jolene. Instead, you went behind my back. Do you even realize what you've done?" She hid her face in her hands, her words muffled by sobs. "I never wanted to hurt you. I was foolish, selfish. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness." "You're right," I said coldly. "You don't. And you're not getting it." I pointed to the divorce papers. "Sign them. Right now. This marriage is finished." Jolene's cries echoed in the room, but I remained unmoved. I felt nothing. No sorrow, no pity, only an empty space where my love for her used to be. With shaking hands, she reached for the documents, her fingers hovering above the pen. "Conrad, please," she whispered. "Are you absolutely certain this is what you want?" I let out a bitter, humorless laugh. What I wanted was a wife who didn't deceive me while having an affair behind my back. But since that's off the table, then yes, I'm completely sure. Her breath caught, and she sat there, frozen for a moment, staring down at the papers like they were a death sentence. Then, gradually, she picked up the pen. Her signature wavered across the paper, unsteady and reluctant, as if a part of her still clung to the hope that I might reconsider. But the decision was final. Once the ink had dried, our bond was officially broken. She was no longer my wife. She dabbed at the tears streaking her face, then lifted her eyes to meet mine. "I never stopped loving you," she said, her voice catching. I held her gaze for a few lingering seconds before slowly shaking my head. "You don't hurt the ones you love, Jolene. That's just not what love is." Her lower lip quivered, but she didn't protest. No arguments remained between us. I gathered the papers, folded them carefully, and placed them to the side. Rising to my feet, I walked over and opened the door wide. "Your things are packed. Your car is waiting outside. It's time for you to leave." Jolene stood frozen for a moment. "Could we maybe—" "No," I interrupted firmly. Her shoulders sagged as she drew in a long, uneven breath. Then, she reached down, grabbed her suitcase, and moved toward the exit. At the threshold, she paused, lingering there as if silently pleading for a flicker of forgiveness or some sign I might still care. I felt her eyes on me, searching for any sign of softness. But I stayed silent. I didn't look away, didn't budge. Finally, I closed the door gently behind her. The stillness that followed was overwhelming. After 7 years, I found myself alone. And strangely, for the first time in months, I could truly breathe again.